Good morning. Welcome back into Wake Up America. I'm Rob Finnerty. 3 United States senators are calling for Dr. Anthony Fauci to be fired, claiming he's lost the confidence of the American people. Our next guest is one of those 3 senators, calling out the doctor after a year and a half of misinformation and new questions about what Dr. Fauci knew and when. Joining us for more on this is Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, good morning. So nice to have you back on the show.
Good morning.
Senator, I think it's pretty obvious at this point, if this were literally anyone else, they'd already be gone. Why does Dr. Fauci have to go?
Dr. Fauci has to go because he had information early on and he had questions early on. But was he sharing those with President Trump and with Congress and the American people? No, he chose to share it with Mark Zuckerberg. And what he did was to choose big tech, Mark Zuckerberg, the Chinese Communist Party, and protecting a Chinese Communist Party-run lab over giving that information to the American people.
Senator, Dr. Fauci, and this is unusual, but he responded to your calls directly yesterday on Meet the Press. I wanted to get your reaction. Take a listen.
Sure.
How do you debunk something like that? She's got it in her own head. Again, a United States senator that represents the state of Tennessee. What do you say to that?
You know, Chuck, I don't have a clue of what she just said. I don't have a clue of what she's talking
Neither
about.
did we.
I mean, welcome to the club. I have no idea what she's talking about. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be pejorative against a United States senator, but I have no idea what she's talking about.
Strong words, pretty condescending. Senator, your reaction.
Dr. Fauci did with big media what he did with big tech, and you will note while he ridiculed my statements and ridiculed me, he did not refute anything that I said. And that is the problem. We know that he was in cahoots with Mark Zuckerberg. This has all come out. We also know that he had questions about what was going on in that lab and gain-of-function research and how this may have gotten away from them. We also know that he had questions about this virus actually having been leaked in some way, shape, or form from that lab. But what he chose to do was protect himself, protect the lab, protect the Chinese Communist Party, you know, try to cover his six, if you will. And what he did not do was come to Congress or the administration, the president, President Trump, Vice President Pence, and say, hey, you know, we need to get in behind this and figure out where this virus is, what has happened. And Rob, think about this. If we had known this at the time that Dr. Fauci had these questions and concerns, how could that maybe have helped to speed up getting a vaccine? Operation Warp Speed that President Trump did was incredibly successful.
Well, yeah.
That is how we ended up with this vaccine as quickly as we did, within 9 months.
And Senator, let's be honest. He kept saying, I don't know what she's talking about. Now, I would never put words in your mouth, but I think we could probably explain it to Chuck Todd and the indomitable Dr. Fauci. I think what you were talking about is the $600,000 grant that went through the EcoHealth Alliance to the Wuhan Institute of Virology that possibly funded coronavirus research, which might be the source of this virus that's killed at least 3 million people worldwide, that we know about. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, we know that Dr. Fauci's agency, the NIAID, which is the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease, that they stroked a check to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for research on coronaviruses. Now, bear in mind, Rob, we have 2 labs in the U.S. that do research on coronaviruses. One of those labs is in Nashville at Vanderbilt University.
Right.
And so, yes, is research done on coronaviruses? Yes, it is. But
Senator, how many deadly viruses have leaked out of that lab in Nashville?
Not any.
Okay, not any. There we go. Senator, later today you're holding a press conference to talk about how big tech, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, how they censored anyone, myself included, who suggested long ago that this virus may have possibly come from a lab. What can we expect today?
what you can expect is for us to point to some of what we know and call for accountability for Dr. Fauci. He should go. He should step aside from his position while these emails are investigated, while the actions that he took from the lab or took from his agency on behalf of the American people. This all needs to be investigated. We have standing committees in the U.S. Senate that can take this up today.
All right, Senator, right now it seems like there's it's almost unanimous agreement in the medical and scientific community that this virus may have come from a lab. It seems like more evidence points in that direction right now. I had somebody on from the World Health Organization on the program yesterday, and I asked what we do if the Chinese continue to stonewall us with regard to that investigation. Take a listen. If they continue to stonewall us with regard to this investigation, what do we do after that? What next?
So one is, if we can't give China a veto over whether or not we investigate this pandemic. If they continue to block access, we need to come together with our allies and partners around the world and establish a parallel investigation process and get to the bottom of things. If through that process China continues to stonewall, I think we should see that as at least a partial admission of guilt.
Senator, if they stonewall, is that's an admission of guilt?
Well, this is why we were questioning them from the get-go. They would not let the World Health Organization or our diplomatic scientists, they would not let them into the lab. They would not let us see what was going on. And then we find out that we have substantial amounts of taxpayer funding into this lab. And this is one of the reasons, Rob, that they sanctioned Senator Cotton, Senator Rubio, and me. They didn't want us in China. We were banned from coming to China.
Right.
Because they did not want people knowing what was going on in that lab. They also banned on Twitter one of the virologists that said this is what the CCP is doing
one of the
in that
whistleblowers.
lab.
Right. I think it's fascinating. So the administration, they've essentially bought themselves 90 days to figure out what to do if we, A, determine that it did come from a lab or not. But also, if China stonewalls, what do we do as a country? How do we respond? That's something that I hope you all are considering very closely as well, because that's going to be a big question very soon. Senator Marsha Blackburn, such a pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right. Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.